I would like to welcome you all to our August 2025 meeting of Science, Scripture, and Reason. For those of you who may be joining us and not have come before, we are a local science apologetics group, and we were formerly the Sacramento chapter of Reasons to Believe before the chapters were disbanded. So we're continuing on in that mode. And we are really delighted this evening to have Dr. Francisco Paco Delgado with us. Paco is a medical doctor with a specialty in infectious diseases. He earned his MD from Universidad La Salle in Mexico City, trained in Miami, and then did an infectious disease fellowship at Vanderbilt University, and has been in clinical practice over 25 years. Our connection is because Paco discovered Reasons to Believe ministry in 1997 while he was looking at different views of Genesis in the history of the Christian church. And he's been involved with RTB ever since, and like us, is now leading his own local apologetics chapter, India Apologetics, in the Indianapolis area. He lives with his wife and three daughters in the area, although one now, Paco is telling me, is in Nashville and expecting. So Paco will become a grandfather soon, which is good news. And he's, amongst many things, he's a pilot, and he with his wife, hosts cooking club. So from people all over the world, I understand that they decide what they're going to cook, and it's probably better than any of the TV shows that we watch. So Paco is going to be talking to us this evening on the human-microbe relationship. So welcome, Paco, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Randy and Jane, for the invitation. Yeah, I guess I don't like to sit still, so I've been doing all kinds of things, and then I complain that I am too busy. Anyways. Let me see if I can share my screen here. So Randy was telling me that there's some of you that are physicians. Please, if you have any questions, stop me sometimes. I try to make the talk understandable and at a level that everyone can get it, but sometimes the physician part may kick in, and if you if you get a little bit lost, please let me know so that we can explain some other concepts. But at the end, we can have a little bit more of a question and answer session where I can try and answer any of the questions that you may have had. So yeah, as Randy was saying, I am an infectious diseases physician. It's an area of medicine that not a lot of people are aware of. We actually do most of our practice in hospitals. Usually I tell patients, if you see me, it's because I'm really bad news, but I'm also good news in the sense that we are probably one of the only branches in medicine that we can actually cure people. We don't just treat people, we can cure people. And then when we are done, I can tell my patients, okay, you don't need to see me anymore. Have a wonderful life. So infectious diseases is actually a very fun field. I love what I do, and God has given me the opportunity of doing this and fulfilling a lot of the dreams that that I've had. He's been very faithful to his word. Anyways, so investigating what infectious diseases and the impact on apologetics. This talk was the product of all of those considerations. So let me see if I can make this work. There we go. Human body. We tend to think about our bodies as kind of apart from everything else. In our bodies, this is like a little bit of a graph of how many cells you have in your body. Most of the cells in your body are red cells, the cells in your blood. There are a small percentage of muscle cells. These are also blood cells. This is fat cells, about average, of course. This is your brain. A very, very small amount of cells, or percentage of cells, really compose your body. So the number of cells in this little chart would be 25 times 10 to the 12 red cells. 5 times 10 to the 12 are the rest of the other cells in your human body. What people are not aware of is that bacterial cells actually are more abundant in our bodies than our own cells. That means we are covered with bacteria all over completely, and they actually make make the most uh, cells that we carry around in what we call our body. Yes, the human cells are, like I said, bigger in mass. Bacterial cells have a very small mass, so it's not if you use antibiotics, soap, you're going to get rid of some weight. No, what that won't it won't happen like that. Uh, but the impact that these bacteria have in our bodies is very big. We call those bacteria that live in our body the microbiome. Now, I'm only going to be talking about bacteria. There are many more millions of viruses in our bodies, and we do not know what is the contribution or the impact, whether benign or malignant, that these viruses may have in our body. Some of these viruses, or I would say most of these viruses, actually help in the regulation of multiple functions in our metabolism, in our health, and we'll touch a little bit about that. We do not know what is the role of fungi or protozoa either. So we are only going to be focusing on bacteria, even though just keep in mind that the area of viruses and other microorganisms is still is yet to be discovered. Most of the bacteria live in our gut. Um, there are a lot of bacteria in your mouth. There are some bacteria in our esophagus. There are also a few bacteria in the stomach, even though it's a very uh, difficult environment for bacteria to grow. As a matter of fact, the stomach is one of the defense mechanisms of our body. If we eat something, the acid will destroy most of the bacteria that we ingest. But then as we move down in the gastrointestinal tract, there are more and more bacteria to the point that the colon is the organ in our body that has the highest number of bacterial species. We do have bacteria in our airways and in our windpipes. We are now starting to find out that there are some bacteria that actually live very deep in our lungs. Our skin is completely covered with bacteria. And the urogenital tract is also an area that we're going to be finding a significant amount of bacteria. So I like this quote that humans are really superorganisms whose metabolism represents an amalgamation of microbial and human attributes. And we're going to be exploring a little bit about this. Now, if you think about this, about, when God made man, he put him in the garden. And we think, oh, wow, just this completely sterile person just was put in the garden. I don't know how it all went, but I know that immediately God provided for Adam's benefit a makeup of bacteria that would be helping him survive and thrive in the world that he had created. But now we know that, Adam being created de novo, when we are born, we're actually there is a very interesting path in which we start getting those bacteria that are going to be with us probably for the rest of our lives. We still think, and there's a little bit of research right now, that the baby in utero is in a sterile environment. That's right now the paradigm. And one of the things that babies need to know as soon as they are born is to be able to recognize what is, what is good and what is bad. So that recognition, okay, this I have to take care of and need to destroy, this I need to keep, is what we call the immune system. We are therefore, from the very beginning, from our birth, given a defense mechanism. We have this artillery that is ready to fire upon something that is not supposed to be there. However, if you think about it, all these soldiers that are manning these big guns, they have to be able to recognize, and this is part of the intelligence or the amazing part of the design. How can a soldier recognize if he sees an airplane flying out there, whether the airplane is a friend or a foe? Now, there's a lot of cognition here in the immune system. How can it tell that when the baby comes out, okay, if it encounters something, it needs to either kill it or let it live, let it get into their body? If you think about it, then it's not an easy task. We know what happens when the body is unable to do that. There's a disease called severe combined immune deficiency, what is commonly called the bubble babies. They have a severely impaired immune system and they are unable to differentiate the friend from the foe. And they can be prey to multiple run-of-the-mill viruses and bacteria and could put their lives at risk. So when the baby is born, it seems that the mode of delivery actually is a first determinant on trying to train that immune system and on what is good and what is bad. We have found that babies with through vaginal delivery are colonized or get the bacteria from the gut of the mother, and those bacteria start establishing themselves in niches inside and outside of the body of the baby, and those will start actually impacting the function of the immune system. Babies that are born from cesarean surgeries actually get colonized with bacteria from the skin of the mother, which will start triggering some different pathways in the immune system. And there is some talk that the babies that are born through cesarean delivery may have a higher risk of developing autoimmune diseases. For example, asthma, things like Crohn's disease, things like these. Once the body of the baby is being exposed to certain bacteria, it starts its training. So training of the immune system starts at the moment we're born. It continues through breastfeeding. We know that breastfeeding gives the baby exposure to multiple other compounds, not necessarily just organisms, but also immune system components that are going to help continue training that immune system. Babies that are bottle fed do not have that benefit of the training. Now, this the training of the immune system is something that it still amazes me. If we had to put it into an algorithm or into a graph on how the immune system works, it would look like this. What you see here is inputs and outputs. So this is essentially the way that one cell of the immune system works. This is a CD4 T cell, the cell that is attacked by the AIDS virus. It recognizes some inputs and it will follow several pathways to be able to give the exact immune response that our bodies are going to need to live. Which it looks a lot like a like a computer motherboard. Tell me, how do you go and design something like this? How can you create all these pathways, make sure that they're functioning correctly? This is something that I always find mind-boggling. So the importance of the immune system. An adequately functioning immune system is crucial for our health. our immune system is functional from birth, and it's able to recognize, but it needs adequate training. And that adequate training of our immune system is essential for our health. Alterations in the components of our immune system could lead to disease. Alterations in the training of our immune system could lead to disease. And microorganisms can become allies in maintaining our health throughout our lives. So this is where we're going to be touching a little bit on how these things work. Let's take our skin, for example. As like I said a little bit ago, our skin is covered with bacteria. Now, the bacteria that are on our skin, the most common one is something called Staphylococcus epidermidis. We call it Staph epi for short. This bacteria colonizes essentially all of our skin. And Randy, you're a dermatologist, so I'm talking here about something that you know very well about. Anyways, Staph epi has multiple functions. First, it helps some of the white cells here, the dendritic cells on the skin, into activating something called regulatory T cells. There has to be a balance between the number of bacteria in our skin and the activation of the immune system. It becomes a balance. If you have too many bacteria, disease can happen. If you have too little bacteria, diseases can also happen. So you have to have this balance between the bacteria and the immune system. The Staph epi produces something called small chain fatty acids. Those small chain fatty acids, if they are overproduced, they can also lead to some skin diseases. So the regulatory T cells are actually going to be controlling the number of bacteria that will be producing all these kind of other metabolic products. Staph epi also produces some antimicrobials, that's antibiotics for short, that will prevent other bacteria that are aggressive from establishing a niche on our skin. One of those bacteria you might have heard about is Staph aureus. This is a very aggressive bacteria that can cause severe skin diseases, and it can penetrate the skin and go through multiple areas of the body. So the function here of Staph epi is to produce these other compounds, antimicrobials, that are going to be regulating and preventing bad bacteria from getting into our skin. They also produce other compounds that will work as anti-tumor cells. So the compounds like this 6-HAP will be acting as a tumor prevention chemical. In wound healing, Staph epi and other bacteria on the skin will alert and guide the cells from the immune system to, first of all, clean the wounds, destroy bacteria, destroy dead cells, and resorb all those compounds and promote wound healing. So as you can see, whenever we do not have a healthy balance between the immune system and the bacteria in our skin microbiome, that could lead to multiple problems. Now, this same process that we see in the skin will apply to other areas of the body, including mouth, lungs, gut, vaginal area, everywhere. This is essentially the same things that I've put in the skin, or very similar, will happen all over our body. What happens though if the immune system is not adequately trained? Well, that would be having friendly fire. You would be throwing bombs on top of your own defenses. So what we have been able to see is that, and these experiments have been mostly in rats, but I think they can be very easily extrapolated to what the human body does. At the time of birth, there is this, from the time of birth, there's this window of opportunity for introduction of bacteria. If bacteria are introduced during this window of opportunity, the outcome is going to be adequate. If that window of opportunity is passed, we will be having some problems. So we have seen that in rats with germ-free, if they do not get exposed to an adequate amount and kind of bacteria, those rats will be susceptible to inflammation of the colon. Now, if we put the right combination and the right at the right amounts of bacteria, then the rats will develop a healthy colon. So you have to be exposed at the right time. If those bacteria are introduced outside of that window of opportunity, there will still be the susceptibility to inflammation of the colon. And also, if the exposure happens during the window of opportunity, but only from one kind or a very limited kind of bacteria, then the outcome will also be susceptibility to inflammation or colitis. So we need the right combination of bacteria at the right time for our bodies to develop a healthy body. If this is done outside of the window of opportunity, or if it is done the wrong way, and the wrong way meaning not the right kind of bacteria, then there can be a problem with inflammation of the organs. Right here. Same thing happens in the lung. Essentially, you can just extrapolate it to the lungs. We've seen that, again, the right combination of bacteria introduced during the window of opportunity will give us a healthy lung, and anything outside of that will have an increased susceptibility to asthma, which is an inflammatory condition in the lung. Same thing happens with the other branch of the immune system, which is the humoral immune system. If our antibodies are not trained adequately, then we will have allergic problems. Anaphylaxis here is an exaggerated response to something in the environment. You've heard about the peanut allergies, and people who die from peanut allergies is because they developed anaphylaxis. So introducing the right bacteria during that window of opportunity decreases the chances of these individuals or of these rats to develop anaphylaxis in the future. So it is now increasingly clear that early life colonization also coincides with a potentially time-limited period during which the immune system is permissive to microbial instruction. So you go back and thinking about, how we come in. God designed us to come into a world that, yeah, it was going to have a lot of dangers, but those dangers or those bacteria were going to be used or going to be integrated into our organisms, and they would be for our benefit. We see a problem, or we have seen a problem more recently in children that have been raised in a rural environment versus children that have been raised in a more urban environment. These are actually very interesting studies that find that if you are exposed to sunlight, fresh air, dogs, cats, farm animals, that actually allows your immune system to be trained in a better way. If you live in an indoor environment, in an urban environment, there will be not a lot of these, what people say, dirty things, or I don't even know how to call it. All of these different what we call antigens, and the immune system will not be trained adequately. We are seeing an increase in autoimmune diseases, probably because of this phenomenon, because we are going more towards an urban environment, and our immune systems are not being adequately trained. And there have been some studies in children about this. This blue kind of bacteria, the Bacteroides, are actually beneficial when you're in a rural area, most of the children have in their guts these good bacteria, but in the urban area, the bacteria that predominates are these ones, the firmicutes. These ones are not as good. They are less helpful, if I had to use a word. We have seen the progression of our society from the 1850s with modernization on the microbiome diversity. Modernization does if you have minimal modernization, you will have a very high diversity in your microbiome, whereas the more the more urbanized we become, our microbiome diversity decreases significantly. And this again leads us into other kinds of diseases that are more in the allergic or autoimmune realm. We this is not something that is always set in stone. We can change our microbiomes. It's not that easy, but we can actually improve it throughout our lives. But as a society, we can also, and this is the thing, we can also try and improve it, not being so, I would say, germophobic. That would be probably the worst thing you can do, to try to keep a baby in a very, very clean environment. I'm not saying also, oh yeah, take him into, the what they call it, the measles parties or something. No, no, I wouldn't go to that extreme. But going out and, having exposure to animals is really actually beneficial for children. Modernization, like I said, water sanitation has decreased the exposure to a lot of microorganisms. Less exposure to animals, there's less exposure to parasites. Smaller families with fewer children, and antibiotics. All these have been have had an impact in modernization, and of course in the microbiomes of humans. Let me talk a little bit of antibiotics, because that's what I do a lot. And in infectious diseases, I gotta tell you, people think that we're the ones that give antibiotics, but most of the time in the hospital, what we do as infectious diseases physicians is actually stop antibiotics. I guess we stop antibiotics about 70% of the time, and we start new ones about 30% of the time. Antibiotic use within the first 6 months of life is associated with an increased susceptibility to allergy and asthma at 6 years of age. Antibiotic exposure during the first year of life is associated with development of wheezing and eczema at 8 years of age, even after taking into account early life respiratory infections. So antibiotics do have an impact in the microbiome, and it depends on when these antibiotics are used, and of course at how much they're used. They could have detrimental effects in the future. Exposure to antibiotics in childhood, especially during the first year of life, associated with an increased risk for development of inflammatory bowel disease, and also associated with increased susceptibility of being overweight and developing central adiposity, which may lead to increased development of type 2 diabetes later in life. So overall, the medically important antibiotics account for 62% of all antibiotics sold for use in food-producing animals, and 70% of all medically important antibiotics in the U.S. are sold for use in animals. So it's not only a human problem, this is also a problem even from the animals that we use. There's been a lot of talk about multi-drug resistant organisms, but somebody did a study one day. They went and swabbed all of the delis on the supermarkets and found that essentially the delis are full of multi-drug resistant organisms, probably from the antibiotics that have been given to the animals before they were brought to the stores. So there is a balance between using antibiotics for beneficial use, but there's also a risk. And that's why we as infectious diseases physicians, we try to keep the benefit above the risk whenever we decide to give someone an antibiotic. Now, we talked a little bit about obesity, diabetes. There is also other effects that we're learning about. Many of them are not completely clear, mental health, atherosclerosis, but we have seen some mechanisms on how this impact uh, uh, can happen. Part of it, obesity, this is very interesting. A lot of why are antibiotics used in livestock? Well, because they actually make the animals fatter and they actually can fetch a higher price in the market. So antibiotics are able to make animals obese. How do they do that? Again, by decreasing the amount of bacteria that keep an adequate metabolism. We know that rats that are fed with a high fat will be lean. The same effect happens if you have rats that at birth are exposed only to one or a very limited number of bacterial species. These will become obese. If you notice, it would be something very similar to what the antibiotics are doing. They are actually killing a very large amount of different bacteria, leading only a few ones to survive. Whereas if you have animals that at birth have a healthy microbiome, they will end up being lean and they will not have obesity. Um, and this is one of the possible mechanisms in which these may happen. If you eat healthy carbohydrates, like fiber, for example, the good bacteria on our gut will be able to metabolize and actually use some of those carbohydrates. Some of those carbohydrates will be used for the cells which are necessary for life, but an adequate amount of these carbohydrates are going to be blocking the overacting of an immune system, a white cell here. They will be metabolized and delivered in a healthy way. This is essentially uh, uh, how a healthy body should work. But if you have issues, for example, let's take away the healthy bacteria and we just put a very limited amount of bacteria, then or let me rephrase that. We start from here. If you feed someone the wrong sugars, and here in this case would be sucrose will select or will be used more efficiently by certain bacteria. And the good bacteria will have a handicap. The abnormal sugars will promote, therefore, the growth of only a select amount of bacteria. The metabolism of these sugars will be altered. It will lead to a completely different metabolism and deliver a completely different uh, way of processing the fats. If those and also those I would call it bad sugars, or you can just lump it into a bad diet. That bad diet can also lead to metabolism products, means these compounds are turned into these other little chemicals that could have an impact by activating the immune system and and destroying the healthy cells in our body. And this is kind of the graph of how you can see that. We've seen, for example, that a limited microbiome will activate inflammatory pathways and it'll start damaging the cells, for example, in the gut. These will in turn cause these will cause the metabolic pathways again to be altered. I gotta tell you, I guess I should tell you this. There's a disease called Crohn's disease. We call it inflammatory bowel disease. And it is a very nasty disease. It's one of those that I do not wish on anybody. Uh, Essentially, the gut will start eating itself up and causing inflammation, causing ulcers. It can cause perforations, and we see people coming in with abscesses in the abdomen. Sometimes they develop something called fistulas, which is essentially that the perforation goes all the way up to the skin. Very, very nasty disease. There have been some very interesting studies in which people who are fed an adequate microbiome actually can decrease all of the effects of Crohn's disease. So in a way, it seems that a therapeutic modality, meaning a way we can treat these Crohn's disease, is actually by giving people the right bacteria. Now, don't ask me what the right bacteria is because nobody really knows. It seems that our bodies are from birth, they are genetically accepting of some bacteria and not necessarily genetically accepting of some. It seems that then you grow up with a microbiome that is yours. I think you could call it something like your digital print, your fingerprint. There is a fingerprint of the microbiome on your body, and each person will react probably in a very different way to different combinations of good bacteria. So this is a very complicated interaction that we have between the microbes and humans. Diabetes is essentially the same story. If you have a limited population of bacteria, the metabolic pathways are going to lead towards inflammation and also, abnormal accumulation of fat, abnormal accumulation of other chemicals in the body. Same thing with atherosclerosis. Those products seem to have an effect in the immune system that will lead also that would lead to plaque formation in the coronary arteries. These are some studies are coming very, very interesting on how some bacterial products will actually trigger some chemical pathways in which some neurotransmitters, for example, good bacteria will give you these chemicals, and they will have an impact on the brain, but some of the bad bacteria will cause these other chemicals, the gamma aminobutyric, oh, I've missed a B, gamma aminobutyric acid, that could lead to depression. So it seems that the microbiome may even have an impact on mental health. We still don't know how. There are some other studies that maybe could be related to the neurodegenerative disorders such as Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. This is an area that is still in its infancy. I was doing a more updated search because this talk, I've given this talk already for about, I don't know, 10 years maybe, and not much has changed. And it just talks about the complexity of the interaction between the bacterial cells and our own cells. It's an interesting story also that I would like to include here. There's something called Clostridium difficile. This is a very, very bad bacteria. To get that bacteria, you really need to have two things. One is exposure, meaning for some reason you got it into your gut, and you need to be exposed to antibiotics. If you get these two factors, if you add them, then you could really end up with a very severe disease, an inflammation of the colon that can kill people. And unfortunately, I've seen people who have died because of this disease. So interestingly enough, one of the way that we treat C. diff is not just using other antibiotics, but we actually now get capsules of stool from healthy donors. And then these patients will ingest those capsules that have stool in them. The capsules will dissolve in the stomach, and all those good bacteria will again cover the whole gut. And this has been actually much more effective than using other antibiotics. And this is just to show how, restoring the balance that we had before, restoring a healthy microbiota can have a significant impact in the health of an individual. A lot of people ask me about probiotics. And I gotta tell you, there are a lot of papers out there. I still find limited evidence for the role of probiotics as modulators of the human gut. The reason is because if you get probiotics, you will get billions of one kind of cell or two kinds of cell, and it does not really um, mirror what happens in the human body. Like I told you with the C. diff, when we put the fecal matter in the capsule, that is multiple different kinds of bacteria. Eating a probiotic or taking a probiotic pill only has one or two or three. It's not the same. So I think that the right probiotic would be the one that has the adequate amount of bacteria according to your body. And that is still something that will need to be developed in the future. It probably has to be more personalized than what we're doing right now. Probiotics, if used too much of one, they could be detrimental in regard to recolonization of microbiota after antibiotic use, meaning you take antibiotics, you wipe out most of them, you take a probiotic, but now you've again colonized your gut only with one kind instead of letting your body just recover and trying to get multiple different kinds of bacteria. So what I tell people when they come and ask me, so I've been on antibiotics, what do I do? I usually tell them, you like yogurt, take yogurt. But otherwise, if you eat your regular diet, a good diet, then your body will essentially repopulate your gut with the bacteria that it needs. There's this other idea of prebiotics. Prebiotics are a substrate that is selectively utilized by host microorganisms, conferring a health benefit. That's the definition of this thing. So what does that mean? That means that instead of ingesting the bacteria, we actually ingest the chemicals or the food for a specific kind of bacteria. Like I said, if you have a good diet, you may be feeding the right kind of bacteria, but if you have a bad diet, then you will be feeding the wrong kind of bacteria. So trying to see what are those foods for bacteria that are going to promote the growth of an adequate microbiome, that's another very interesting research avenue. And we still need to see which ones are going to be beneficial and which ones are not. So a couple of slides regarding some conclusions. The bacteria that constitute the normal human microbiota are specifically designed to maintain human health. And this is part of that providence from God. The bacteria and microbiota are established early in life. They play a very important role in the training of our immune system. They influence many areas of human metabolism, and their disruption can lead to chronic diseases. And the strategies to restore healthy microbiota are still evolving. From a biblical standpoint, we were given a very complex and very well-designed immune system to live in this planet that is full of other forms of life. You've heard through the RTB podcast and material that, if this world is essentially covered with bacteria, and if there were no viruses, then bacteria would take over the world. So the bacteria and viruses in this planet not only they have a balance so that all life thrives in this planet, but it also allows us to thrive in this world as humans, which calls us to that we need to be very good stewards of our bodies. That includes taking care of the microorganisms that inhabit our bodies. It sounds counterintuitive. People like to have their antimicrobial gels and antimicrobial soaps and everything. We really need to take care of the organisms that are actually promoting our health. We have been given minds to help us find ways to restore healthy relationships between the bodies and the microorganisms in this planet. And this is going to be a very exciting area of research in the next in the next years, because this is something that we are just now starting to learn about. And And I really am. I would like to see what turns out from all of all of this research that is coming out. Anyways, the words of the psalmist, I praise you because I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. This is just mind-boggling. Looking at, I don't think that David was able to look at a microscope and look at these microbes. It is like, now we see the cell. Darwin had no idea what was in the cell, and now we see how complex is the cell. Nobody had the microscopes at that time, and now we see what the microscopic world is doing to keep us healthy, and how it benefits us all, and all this again just thanks to the providence of God. Anyways, so that's the end of the talk. I guess I gave you a lot of information. Any questions?
Thank you, Paco. That was extremely enlightening, and we need to take better care of our microbiota. That's a takeaway. Thank you.
You're a dermatologist, Randy.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit. What do you think about all this? Because I see it from the infectious diseases standpoint, but I'm sure you saw this when you were doing dermatology as well.
Yeah, and there's interesting, and just looking at some of the more recent literature, there's a lot more now being talked about the importance of the microbiota in inflammatory conditions on the skin. So I think that that's a field that's just starting to take off. I think we're going to realize that in a lot of inflammatory lesion type things, certain diseases, the microbiota play a significant role. So yeah, I think we're going to see it in a lot of areas in medicine. It's been definitely neglected. Yeah. If
you have a question,
Eric, you want to unmute yourself, and Jen is after Eric can ask Paco the questions.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for that really great talk. I enjoyed it a lot. And I don't know if those slides will be accessible. I think they are right on your websites or something, but just some really cool diagrams you've got there. I guess my question was whether the bacteria that live inside the gut are mostly living inside the lumen of the gut, or are they actually inside the walls in the extracellular spaces or the lymphatic spaces and penetrating, the actual human tissues versus kind of just more on top of?
Yeah. So the bacteria are usually in the lumen part. Now, you have viruses, and I have no idea how many viruses are integrated inside your cells that may be actually impacting also the metabolism of your cells. But bacteria will usually be just on in the lumen of the gut.
Mm-hmm. While I have you here, I was actually thinking of another question. You mentioned that there's this kind of window opportunity that seems to close after 2 weeks postpartum.
That's in rats.
Okay, fair enough. But do we have an understanding of in rats what happens at 2 weeks that causes that window to close?
What happens?
Yeah, I mean, why doesn't it stay open for longer, or what's the
Yes.
mechanism by which?
It seems that the immune system decides, okay, training is over. Now we know
Okay.
what to look for,
Yeah,
basically.
System here, yeah. Wait.
And
yeah,
once that happens, then you can try to introduce whatever, but the immune system said, nope, now this is what
yeah.
we saw, this is what we encountered, this is what we're going to be doing. So it seems that the motherboard is set. That's probably the way I
Okay,
would see it.
yeah. Maybe it has some kind of capacity that it decides it's done. And in the human, we don't know that window per se.
We know there's a window. It's early. I don't think it's 2 weeks. It's probably in the first year of life. But I think that humans are a little bit more malleable. They're not probably as set as
Mm,
as a big motherboard. I think there is
sure,
some areas that are set, but which ones are still malleable later down in life, I don't know.
sure.
That's probably part of the questions that we need to answer.
Yeah. A final follow-up while I've got you, and then I'll let the other is just kind of looking at the last 100 years of Western civilization or so, I think we have to admit that in the past, the farmer would get a prick on his finger from a wagon wheel and then be dead of sepsis like a couple of weeks later, right? So certainly we've progressed a lot in terms of preventing those kinds of early calamities, and the introduction of antibiotics has been overall, admittedly, a fantastic thing, right? It seems like maybe somewhere between too little and too much, and in terms of the human gut, too much or too little, et cetera. Maybe we've found areas where the pendulum has swung a little the other way too much. But would you have any kind of like bigger picture perspective as an infectious disease specialist living and working in 2025? What the last from 1825 to 1925 to 2025, you know, what your opinions are on the last 200 years of human civilization along these lines?
What is your background, Eric?
My background is irrelevant to this. No, my background is as I'm an orthopedic surgeon at Kaiser. I know Randy from.
Okay, great. So you know what? As an orthopedic surgeon, one thing I see in medicine a lot is that antibiotics have become, I don't know why, kind of a vitamin. People demand them. Doctors give them very quickly, very, easily. I think they are great chemicals. I think that they have transformed, they have increased the longevity of people. They have, my goodness, you get someone with meningitis and without antibiotics, they die. Yet we're able to save people with antibiotics. So I think that they have been a great blessing that we've been able to harvest these chemicals and use them. But the other part is the overuse. And the overuse, I think, is causing as you say, there are issues. There are problems that arise from the overuse of these things. Like in any technology, all technologies can be used for good, but yeah, we can use them for bad also. And I think that the detriment is using them when it is not appropriate. That's the bottom line. And that's only about antibiotics. I think your question was very broad, so I'm not sure what else you would like me to comment about.
Fair enough.
Because I mean, you talk about vaccines. Oh my goodness, vaccines have helped a lot as well. I mean, there's a lot of disease, but some, as we've seen, some overuse of some of the vaccines could also be an issue. I don't know. Those are things that, like any technology, we need to make sure that we use
Well,
it for the right
I think that my favorite slide that you showed was the one with the airplanes and how some of them are good and some are friend and some are foe, right? So
Yeah.
I think that for a vast majority of our existence on the planet, bacteria were our foe. Like they were just devastating us left and right, kids, young people, and,
Well,
and
not necessarily. I would challenge that, Eric,
oh, okay.
because if you did not have bacteria from birth, you probably would be dead. That was the example with the common variable immune deficiency. If you did not have the right bacteria, your body wouldn't be able to function adequately. So
Sure.
bacteria are not necessarily the host. They're foes. Oh my goodness. You Staph aureus, foe. Yes, an orthopedic surgeon, you get a Staph aureus prosthetic
Right.
joint. I was like, no, yeah, I don't want that.
Right. There's some bad
Absolutely.
guys out there.
Foe.
Definitely. Yeah.
But if you think about it, any bacteria in the implant is bad. You don't want bacteria in your implant. It has to be completely clean. So the way that we think as an infectious diseases is bacteria have their niche.
Yeah.
They like to be in a place. They should not be where they're not supposed to be.
Sure.
And if they get where they're not supposed to be, that's a problem.
Yeah. There's a
So
time and place for them.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I mean, but we need them. We need them.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
What I like from your talk is that they're friends more than we think they are. And
Yes.
we shouldn't think of them as public enemy number one, even though, if you look through the longevity and the expected longevity of people in 1825, 1925, and 2025, the expected lifespan of humans has gotten longer, partly because we've been able to identify the foes that are there and be more
Absolutely.
effective at killing those guys. And
I
I
completely
think,
agree with you.
you know, we all understand that longer life is better, and that we've done amazing things with improving the longevity. What used to kill people, some of that was the foes, and we've gotten better at getting rid of those guys. But yeah, we can't
Absolutely.
throw the baby out with the bathwater. And it's great to hear a talk like this and understand how many friends there are in the
Yes.
bacterial world too.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I completely agree with you, Eric.
Yeah. Okay, I'll get off. Thanks for your comments.
Jen, did you have a question? You could unmute
I
yourself.
have three, I think. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was wondering, like, so we're born with this microbiome, but we can modify it by eating healthy and spending time outdoors and stuff. Is that correct? Did I
That is
understand that
correct.
right? So, okay, so we eat, healthy whole foods and kale and yogurt and whatnot, bran. But then, like, you eat some cookies and ice cream. How bad is that for your gut microbiome? Like, does that kill off the good bacteria? And then how long does it take to kill off the good ones? And then how long does it take to grow them back if you get, you eat all the cookies, they're gone, and you're back eating your bran and yogurt and fruit?
Yeah. The body
What
has
did
a lot of
you have for
plasticity.
dinner, Jen?
Yeah.
Asking for a friend.
You know, it's a
Healthy
very,
whole
very
foods.
interesting question, Jen. I think that the body is still very plastic. Now, this is an ongoing thing. I think the body will always try to gravitate towards a healthy microbiome. The problem is those chronic bad diets. So if somebody lives only on, let's say, fries, or I don't know, you name it. I don't want to say some, or
High
fast food.
fructose corn syrup.
Yeah, fast food, course, or whatever you want. Those are actually going to be constantly feeding a specific kind of bacteria that are not going to be necessarily healthy. And I think the problem comes by keeping that diet over a very long period of time. So the plasticity comes that if people make diet changes, and this is, it's like, well, your doctor says diet and exercise. Well, yeah, because if you change your diet, you can actually change the kind of food that you're giving the bacteria. And then by having a more, what I would call a healthy diet, I mean, just fruits, vegetables, meats, all kinds of varied stuff, then you will be going back to what the body was designed to have. So can it be reversed? I think it can be reversed. Habits are very difficult to break, but I think this is more of a a chronic issue. It's not like if I eat fries, yeah, I'll go to McDonald's and have my fries, but that's not my regular diet. If I do that, yeah, that might kill them. But you see, the lifespan of bacteria is only hours. That's why you would need a very bad diet for a very long period of time for it to really have an impact.
Right. That's great to know, because I do like my cookies. So, how does all of this microbiome stuff relate to people who've had surgical removal of their colon, either for cancer, inflammatory bowel disease, or some other condition? And so, do those people not have microbiomes, or does the microbiome live in the small intestine? How does that work?
So that, I think it depends on let's say the colon. Someone has a colostomy. Now I deal only with adults. I think that in the adult age, you already have the immune system pathway set enough that I don't think that you will find a significant change. and I'm putting an asterisk there because there's a lot of things that I don't know about long-term follow-up in people who have had, for example, colectomies, which is the removal of the colon, and what is their impact on mental health specifically from the microbiome, or what is their effect on weight specifically from the I don't know. Those are very interesting questions. I don't know about children. I know that, children who have other, let's say, diseases of the gut, they will have more chronic problems. But I'm trying to think here, and maybe I'm going here out of my depth. But I think it would be kind of hard to separate what are the effects from the microbiome or just something from a kid having a chronic disease. I don't know. Interesting questions.
The final one, I have a friend I ski with, and she sent me like a bazillion articles on this lactobacillus called L. reuteri. It's
Yeah.
supposed to be a miracle thing that
Yeah.
cures everything. Are all those articles true? She sent me recipes on how to make. It's not exactly yogurt. It's called superfood with L. Right. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it correctly, but
Yeah.
it's interesting.
We go back to my little slide about the probiotics. If you have only one kind of bacteria and you just over ingest that, I don't think that is healthy. I think that going back to your varied population that comes from, just eating a regular diet and eating all different kinds of things, that actually sounds much healthier. I don't think that you can say that this bacteria is a superfood alone. I think that in combination with other ones might be useful. But again, using just 1 billion of one kind, it doesn't mimic the normal human physiology. So I would be skeptical about that.
Okay, my turn. Okay. I generally eat from the three main food groups, sugar, preservatives, and artificial flavoring. But about canning, it seems like maybe all the heat would kill your bitty buddies. And maybe we should lay off the canning and canned foods a little bit. Am I saying something right there? Or
I don't think necessarily you need to get rid of them. Because usually with the canning, if you use like, cane sugar or regular sugars, nothing like corn syrup or something, those are still chemicals that you can consider them good food for bacteria. You have the fruits, canned fruits, or you have the pickled vegetables. All those are going to be good foods for bacteria that are already in your system. So I wouldn't be too concerned about that. I would be more concerned about highly processed foods or foods with a lot of what do they call them, the trans fats and all these things that are substrates for bad bacteria to thrive.
so
That would
the
be more concerned about.
So the point I think I hear is that it's not the bitty buddies that are out there as much as the food that you get for the bitty buddies inside you to grow them.
Correct.
Okay. So
It's both. You want good bacteria, but you also want food to feed the good bacteria.
right. Okay. So you said something about corn syrup. Did I hear
Yeah.
something like really bad or something like that when you said that?
When there are some substrates that can promote the growth of different bacteria that are not necessarily the ones that you need. So and I'm not a nutritionist as much, but from what I have seen, processed foods with the corn syrup will give substrates that could trigger the wrong bacteria to grow.
Okay.
It is not a set in stone, it's the could. I wish in medicine I've learned that you never say always or never. This is could, because there's a lot of the genetic makeup of people that has a lot to do with it.
Well, I think that makes sense. And until we have a personal AI which can discover the bacteria that we need and give us a correct diet, it's going to be a mystery.
It will. So that's why but if you just go back to the AI that I would see here is God. The guidance of, yeah, you're free to eat, wash your hands before you eat. All these kinds of things. Yeah, they're going to be helpful.
Well, that's ultra AI, and we don't necessarily have access to that. But sometimes,
Yeah.
Yeah. You got somebody else?
Yeah, great presentation. Really enjoyed it. You got me thinking in all kinds of directions. I've got a little list of things that came to mind. I mean, basically, you're saying people are a support system for a huge microbiota population. I was wondering how much difference does it make if you're married, you have a family? I mean, you're kissing your wife, you're changing diapers. Your biota winds up a lot different than the family next door if you don't have physical contact with them. So it becomes specific for your family or your group of people you're with.
Yes, and that's a very interesting observation. There are some studies in Eskimos. The Eskimos, what they do is the parents will chew the meat, and
Oh.
then once it's softened, they give it to the babies. So then the microbiome of the babies actually mimics a lot the one of the parents. So yes, the people you are around with will have an impact on your microbiome for sure.
So you're fine-tuned for your specific individual conditions then.
Let me see if I understand the comment.
I say your microbiota are actually fine-tuned for your specific household conditions or the
Yes,
people
and that's why I kind of mentioned that, in a way it's our fingerprint. This is this makeup of this bacteria for your specific body. And yeah, you can share some, like you share the genes with your family members, with your kids, with your parents. There's some of that, but they will have some input or some characteristics of their own.
If it's like a fingerprint, does it actually have application in police work as far as identifying somebody?
Yeah, no, it's not a set, like I said, it's not like a motherboard that is set for good. It looks like there's some plasticity to the human body that we can still do. Because there's a lot of these reports of people who have the Crohn's disease, and and not everyone, but some of them actually respond to what we call fecal microbiota transplant. So we get stool from healthy individuals and we put them in the colon of these people, and they get better.
Yeah.
So, but it's not everyone. So what are the characteristics of these of the fecal matter? What are the components that are actually making people get better? I don't know.
I've been, with a beard, I've been kind of accused of carrying things that other people don't carry. I was thinking it would do the same thing with people that have dogs or cats. I mean, they're kissing the dog and the cat's up on the table. And is there an advantage to having pets, to being around animals with fur that carry things that expose you and keep your immune system at its peak? Are people that have pets healthier than people that don't, or with beards?
Well, that's a complex question. Let me put, for example, cats. Cats are amazing pets. I love cats. But I would keep children and pregnant women away from changing the litter of cats because they carry some really nasty bugs.
It's okay to kiss a cat?
Depends on who you are. You're okay. If it was a pregnant woman, I wouldn't do it. The
Okay.
kids, I would say, probably I would stay away from it. There are some parasites in cats that can actually have very significant negative effects in children and pregnant women.
And but in general, that would be part of the microbiome in that household, I guess, if you have pets or not.
Yeah, yeah. And I gotta tell you, there's a lot of controversy and something that has been coming out. There are some articles, and I'm not sure where this is going, that the people that are, for example, have cats, the children who grow up with cats could have a higher incidence of depression.
Oh,
So yeah, those are things. It's not proven. Is it like you say? That's an interesting observation. I think we need more data and see if that's the case. Right now, that has not been proven, but there is some noise about that. How can it be? There again, there's this parasite that can go to the brain of the children, and that is the avenue that people are thinking about. Not out there. There's just something like to keep in mind. So, but cats also, if you if you get bit by a cat, oh my goodness, the pathogens that they carry are so nasty that it is
dirty bite.
very dangerous,
Yeah.
very dangerous. Yeah. So
Uh,
the farm animals are actually the best exposure if I had to say anything. And even then, with the farm animals, you have some pathogens that can be pretty nasty. So I guess, if you have to say, yeah, this world was very good, but there are also some risks in living in this world. It's not the perfect world. It's a fallen world, but overall, the people who get those severe diseases is the minority. It's not like everybody's going to be getting this disease.
Right. You mentioned the use of antibiotics. I'm saying that would that also include the use of disinfectants or the overuse of disinfectants? Say,
Yeah.
cleaning your kitchen too much. And would that break down to you could actually bathe too much? You could wash too much?
Well,
Be destroying a biota on your skin by overbathing?
I think it depends a lot on what kind of skin you have. Because when you wash yourself, you really are not getting rid of all the bacteria. The bacteria live in usually, and Randy's an expert in this. A lot of your bacteria will live in the pores, in the hair follicles and stuff like that. Soap doesn't reach all the way down there. So what
Okay.
happens is, yeah, you can take a shower, but then you get out and your own hair follicles will start letting all these bacteria out, and will repopulate your skin in a very rapid way.
Okay. So you're just getting rid of dirt, but not really the
That's
microbiome.
correct.
Yeah.
That's correct.
And I would also, and last question is, I understand that what you eat can determine in general the kind of microbiota, the gut bacteria you've got. I was wondering if the bacteria actually compete with themselves. Are some dominant, or is it just which dog you feed that wins, or do they actually
Yes.
have an internal competition
Yes,
over the
there's a
same resource?
competition. There's a competition, and the dog
The
that you
same
feed the
resource.
most is the one that's going to win.
Okay, so they're stronger. They're dominant bacteria. It's not just
Yes.
dependent on the food that's available. They're both eating the same.
So some bacteria will use some substrates preferably than others. That's number
Okay.
one. But economic is very interesting, and I think Eric will see this very easily. There's it's about economics. The good bacteria are actually very efficient at using what's out there. It is only when we try to change something in our diet or in our lifestyle that is not natural, that is not what God designed, when we are going to get in trouble. So if we let the human body be taken care for the way that essentially God told us how to take care of it, it will revert towards its normal stage, its natural stage, most of the time.
Is there any kind of significant difference between various cultures around the world, say between India and the U.S. and Africa and Europe, as far as the general gut biome
Oh yeah.
you find
Oh
in
yeah.
those populations?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Yes, yes. Very, very different. Again, the more rural areas, the less developed countries will have a much higher incidence, or a much higher diversity of microbiomes. One interesting observation is that allergic diseases and autoimmune diseases are actually much more common in the industrialized nations than in the third world nations. Yes.
interesting.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you want to dispute any of that? We maybe should be giving Randy a shot at that last question. Hi, I'm Daly.
Hi.
I have a fairly simple question. You mentioned in the prebiotic and probiotic section that eating yogurt is a good thing to do and solves a lot of problems. So
Well, no, that's what I tell people when they say, what probiotic can I take? You want to take something, take yogurt. The reason why I tell the yogurt is because it also has a lot of protein.
okay. So
And-
are all, go ahead.
Yeah, and protein is actually something that your body usually is going to help whenever, whenever you're recovering from an illness.
So are all yogurts equal, like in the grocery store and in my refrigerator?
As long
I
as you-
see
yeah.
like coconut yogurt or,
As long as you have live active cultures, and beware of the amount of sugars that are in the yogurts. I like the yogurts when they have little or no added sugars
Mhm.
and lots of protein.
Okay.
That's what I go for.
I got one follow sort of it. My question kind of tags on hers. You talk about eating too much sucrose can cause a huge population in the wrong kind of gut bacteria. And I know that sugar is tied to cancer growth, like cancer feeds on sugar. Are bacteria involved in that connection between the sugar and the way the cancer is replicating or not?
What your body will use naturally, normally, is glucose. It will not be sucrose. So when you have all these different chemicals that is not the natural thing, then you could have different outcomes. Let me put it that way, because your cells will need glucose to live, and normal glucose is something that all of your cells are going to be required. If you put something that is not the natural thing, then it could be a problem.
Does cancer prefer sucrose or glucose, or is there a difference?
They will take glucose. There are cells that will take glucose.
Okay.
What is your opinion on fermented foods like kimchi and kefir and those sort of things?
I'm all for it.
Yeah, okay.
I don't like them, but I'm all for it.
You like other people eat them. Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
So, but they do provide some extra bacteria. And I don't know whether they would be diverse or not.
The preparation and everything. I think any fruit, vegetable, anything like that, even as you say, the process, I have not seen any issues with the pickling or with all that stuff. And I mean, some people seem to like it. Some people say it helps them. That's perfectly fine with me. Some people, if you have fiber in there, if you have protein in there, so there's a lot of things that also are involved in that. I guess the bad diet would be in all the processed foods, high fructose corn syrup and trans fats and all these kinds of things that, yeah, I would stay away from those things.
From an apologetics viewpoint, and you touched on this, is that for humans to flourish, there really has to be the right bacteria at the right time in the right amounts. And presumably that's been true for humans from Adam and Eve on. So which would also introduce another element of fine-tuning into the human organism. Not only do we have to be exactly the right construction to host these bacteria, but they had to be the right species also. So it seems like another compelling argument for God's design in humans and human microbiota.
Oh, the design of these interactions, we have only scratched the surface.
Mhm.
Yes, I completely agree.
Doug, did you have a question? Other questions? Any questions from those of you on Zoom yet who've not had a chance to ask something? Okay, well, Paco, thank you again for a wonderful presentation. Did you have somebody coming up? Oh, we have another question here. Daly's coming back.
A follow-up to the yogurt question. Is there a benefit to having it be cow's milk for someone who has an angry gut versus, an alternative yogurt?
Okay, what was the question again?
So if someone has, an unhappy gut, generally avoids dairy.
Yes.
And then you said, you could eat any kind of yogurt. Is there a benefit to eating dairy-based yogurt for someone who has those issues?
Now that's a more specific question because some people have something called lactose intolerance.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a completely different story. Yeah, it would have nothing to do with microbiome. That's a problem with the metabolism of the cell. So if you are referring to lactose intolerance, there are some products that are for lactose free, and that's what I would use.
Okay.
The problem is the lactose. Lactose, whenever you have a gut problems, or not whenever, sometimes when you have a gut problem, you could develop a temporary lactose intolerance. And that's why if you take the dairy, it's going to give you diarrhea. But then that is reversible most of the time. But about 30% of people will have lactose intolerance for the rest of their lives.
Okay.
It also depends on the population. But yeah, that's a more complex question.
Thank you.
I have a son who has a lot of outdoor allergies. Is there any way to improve his microbiome, or is that just
Gosh.
you just kind of have to live with it?
Yeah, and that's a question. The plasticity of that, I do not know. And I don't think anybody knows if we can adjust that later in life. That was the issue with the rats. There's this window of opportunity after that. No matter if you put the good ones, it doesn't change. But humans again are more plastic. Will we be able to find something that will help allergies? We might. I just think that we're very early in this stage to figure out how to do that with the microbes.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
See, now as we are signaling the end, there's a rush of questions because we all have questions. Thank you, Paco. It's been a wonderful time. And again, particularly since you're 3 hours ahead of us, we really appreciate your effort and time, knowing that you have a busy practice.
Well, thank you, Randy.
Just really appreciate you and your expertise and enlightening us. And we would just, for those of you who are here or on Zoom, next month, Dr. John Bloom from Biola will be here. He will be speaking on the archaeological evidence for fulfilled biblical prophecy. So it's going to be a great talk again, and we encourage everyone to come back. If you haven't signed up on our email list, ssreason.org, ssreason.org, please do, and we can send out announcements to you. So again, Paco, again, thank you so much for your expertise and time, and the Lord bless you.
And God bless you too, Randy. Thank you so much. Good night.